usually I like doing them a bit earlier, but America's in daylight savings, or most of the folks that dial in are in some form of daylight savings. I've been popping on. I've been doing these lives for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. I don't do them every day, but I like to go online and just switch on the camera and share my thought stream. We spend so much time bombarded by synthetic content that seems perfectly engineered to capture our attention. And we don't spend a lot of time slowing down. And my invitation used to be, I used to say, good morning, doom scrollers, talking to those of us that are fundamentally doom scrolling and saying, like, what else are you doing with your energy and your attention right now? You might as well come and sit with me and let's get real and let's plumb the depths of what it means to be a human being right now. So Jess is with me now. Let me know where you're dialing in from, Jess. I was looking through my books that I've written to see if there was any poem that was speaking to me today that we could just plod through and reflect and tell us what it tells us about us, really. And there's this one that popped out at me is called Following the Way. I'm just going to lead with that for now. Following the Way. The river always seems to follow the way. The river always seems to follow the way. Good morning, Zoe. The river always seems to follow the way. This is a poem called Following the Way from Keeper of the Flame. The river always seems to follow the way. When the land shifts, as it will, whether by the slow and steady heaving, or whether by sudden violence, while the countless ages trundle by, as the rain and seasons wax and wane by the long count, so the river will shift its course. It keeps on, a torrent or a trickle, flowing as it must, following where it may. The river always seems to follow the way, paying no heed to where it ran yesterday, giving no thought to how it will reach the sea tomorrow. The patient work of eons it will forswear in a minute. It will throw itself from the battlements of a languid certainty, crashing over terrible heights in the epitome of a peasant's faith, to roil and churn with borrowed fury, like stirred and newborn creation, fresh and livid from the womb of chaos. The river always seems to follow the way. It will go even underground. And renounce the sun and leave the house of the sky for the prodigal wandering of traveling by secret paths through the darkness and the tumult to simply and cunningly follow the way, even when it knows not the way. Just so. And if the way is not always seeking better ways, it's not the way. This is, of course, a story about an observation of the natural world and how it behaves, and it's mirrored to ourselves. It says the river always seems to follow the way, even when the land shifts underneath it. In a sense, the way that the landscape is shaped. Here comes Maya. Hello, come show us your picture. Oh la la, come. I'm doing a video here. Beep. Look, Maya did a picture, everyone. She's coloring in Moana and she's learning to color in the lines. You can say hello to everybody, my love. Hi. Are you getting ready for school?
Yes.
Okay. Who are you going to see today? Who's your teacher? Zoe.
Zoe and Erica.
Zoe and Erica, all right. Listen here, I'm going to get a crack-a-lacking beautiful picture. Can I have your picture? Or do you want to give it to Mama? You can take it. That poem, Following the Way, it starts off, it says, when the land shifts as it will, whether by the slow and steady heaving or whether by a sudden violence, the way a river runs towards the ocean, it always follows the path of least resistance, which is always wherever the low point is, wherever it is. And the funny thing is that course of the river is determined by the shape of the land. The river belongs to the land, and the land, the way it is been shaped, In other words, the fate of the land determines the course of the river. But by the same token, the river cuts into the land and shapes the land also. And it's the same with us. Hey Gary, we belong to the moment that we arrive in this world. We are shaped by the way the landscape is when we join this game. And we're looking for the path of least resistance. And sometimes that's to be compliant with the story that we inherit from our parents. Yeah, man. And sometimes, oh, by the way, I read an epic essay written by Gary recently. It's just called Journal. It's one of his recent journals, number 3, I think it was called. But it's a very unassuming title for a very incredible essay. I recommend you check it out. It's about the first person perspective of a human being, especially a neurodivergent human being that finds themselves at odd, trying to find their own lowest resting state in a landscape that sort of doesn't naturally let them pass. Very much about the topic we're talking about today. The river always seems to follow the way, and when the land shifts, as it will, whether by the slow and steady heaving or whether by a sudden violence, while these countless ages trundle by, as the rains and seasons wax and wane by the long count, so the river will shift its course. And it's a mirror to our own journeys. We sort of arrive here in this life and we've got like our calling to reach the sea. You know, no two rivers are the same. Nature doesn't make duplicates or copies. It makes these profoundly unique individuals. And spiritually or psychologically, we're all trying to reach this place of release and contentment and fulfillment. There's so many words for it in different spiritual traditions. In Greek philosophy, it was called teleology, this final form that we're trying to reach. In the Buddhist context, it's about the great surrender into the ocean of consciousness. For many of us, it's just trying to be whole and to be home, right? And the journey through life is us trying to reach that peace, right? And it talks about this relationship between the fate of the world that we inherit. Fate to me is nothing more, right, than the shape and the state of everything, of the landscape of everything that we arrive in when we open our eyes now and now, right? And how we interact with that, how the river interacts with that landscape, it shapes the landscape that the next thing that comes is going to experience or encounter what they call fate. And I'm making this observation in this poem about how there's a wisdom to learn from a river, because it's got the same kind of intentionality that we do, but it just keeps on keeping on. It always seems to follow the way, even when it doesn't know the way. How can it know the way when it's first trickling down the mountainside? It's so far from the ocean that it's trying to reach. It hasn't even reached its full maturity yet. It's just this exuberant, bubbling spring that is trickling over rocks and finding its way down to the bottom of the mountain. And that's only the beginning of its journey. And it says here, it keeps on, a torrent or a trickle, flowing as it must, following where it may, paying no heed to where it ran yesterday. And so there's something timeless and amazing about the river in the way that it can let go of its intentionality that it held so earnestly just yesterday and immediately adapt to what is happening today. It's living very much in its own form of now. And it will give no thought to how it will reach the sea tomorrow. And the patient work of eons. So a river can run in a place for thousands of years, and then the land will shift, and then the river will just change course, just like that. It will forswear in a moment. It will throw itself from the battlements of a languid certainty. So when you look at a waterfall upstream, the river is all relaxed and meandering, and then suddenly it's just crashing over this great height, and it's creating this terrible churn at the bottom, right? That if you had to dive over, people don't survive that because of the intense pressures of that tumbling churn. Crashing over terrible heights in the epitome of a peasant's faith, you know, simple rustic relationship that people have with with life is what I call a peasant's faith. They don't have aspirations to nobility. They don't have aspirations to great becomings. They just have aspirations to a life of meaning, and how meaning is determined for them. Good morning, Samuel. How meaning is determined for this archetypal peasant that I'm talking about is the idea of legacy. What mark am I making today? What effort, what wood am I chopping? What water am I carrying for the village? What mark am I leaving so that the generations that will come will be able to enjoy the foothold that I'm helping create in this world? That's it. Crashing over terrible heights in the epitome of a peasant's faith to roil and churn with borrowed fury, like stirred a newborn creation, fresh and livid from the womb of chaos. You know, when that river crashes over the waterfall and it makes that churning cauldron at the bottom, it's almost like it's reinventing itself, yeah? And it's rebirthing some new river with a whole new identity and a whole new energy and a whole new birthplace almost that's going to run on from that place. And it's like that way for us as well. When we come to moments of great calamity and great precipitous change, falling off the cliff, a lot of people that I've been following for some years, they explain the human moment, the present human moment, as sleepwalking to Armageddon, right? We're trundling towards the edge of a cliff that we have no plan for once we fall over that edge. But it's like the fool in the tarot card. He's got these ideals of where he's going, and he's carrying this little wispy flower, and there's a dog capering at his feet, and he's got his head up in the clouds, and he has to fall over that precipice to fall down very, very deeply into a life of consequence, where the illusions that we carry are they meet reality at terminal velocity and they shatter apart on impact, and then we suddenly become into what we call the alchemy of life, the crucible of life, the adult awakening. So it's no mistake that I regard humanity currently. If you look at the whole emergent self of humanity in 2026, it's very adolescent. It's very adolescent, and we're struggling because we've got no parents. You know, Nietzsche said God is dead. For a while, we were all very childlike. Our psyche, the human psyche, was childlike. And I mean the collective human psyche was childlike. And we were still bowing to the daddy figure of Orthodox religion. Now we've reshifted those daddy figures into bosses and world leaders and politicians and so on. But our project is still profoundly adolescent. Only an adolescent can have the relationship with its environment that we have and have no mind for consequence or mutual reciprocity. Only an adolescent mind can believe that the smartest person in the room is the one who extracts the most out of a system while giving the least back, thinking nothing about what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Only an adolescent can believe that you don't have to live in relationship with other people and your environment in such a way that you have to suffer the consequences of your choices, right? And this is really what this poem is about. It's talking about the river, and it says it will go even underground. It will go even underground and renounce the sun. And that doesn't mean that we're turning our backs from the light. It means that there was something I keep bringing up, keeps coming to mind, and it's something I heard on Instagram. Somebody was talking about AA meetings, and they said, it's commonly said, like an inside joke, because AA meetings are held often in the basement of churches. And so the inside joke is, oh, you can go upstairs. You can go upstairs to the church sermon. In other words, you can go upstairs and hear about miracles, or you can come downstairs, and you can be part of them and watch them unfold. And the punchline that this person gave was, we have to go downstairs. Jung said, no tree can reach the heights of heaven if its roots don't also reach down into the depths of hell. And we have to encounter our own shadow. And James Hillman, who I think was a student of Jung's, he wrote about the soul and the soul's code and what the meaning of life really is for a living human being. And it's not to transcend and become some amazing thing like the technological singularity. It's to grow more deeply down into life, to grow more deeply down into life. And the sun archetypally is our ordering principle. And it's sometimes the work that we have to do is outside of that obvious remit, And so it says the river will go even underground, renounce the sun and leave the house of the sky. Oh, there goes my internet connection. Just let me know if it becomes troublesome, yeah? And it will leave the house of the sky for the prodigal wandering of traveling by secret paths through darkness and tumult to simply and cunningly follow the way, even when it knows not the way. And it's suggesting that sometimes the path that we have to take is a dark path, times of trouble, times of profound uncertainty where we can't navigate by the sun, where our whole journey needs to be in some sort of an underworld, metaphorically speaking, because we need to encounter the consequences of death and of ending and of the termination of our identities in some way. And I mean this individually for human beings, but I also mean this collectively for the whole human race. We think we are something. We think we are something, and that idea and that identity is actually too small for the story that is actually trying to live through us. And the poem ends like this. It says, even when it knows not the way, just so, just so. And it ends with this little quip that says, if the way is not seeking better ways, it's not the way. And it's a deliberate reference to the way that the Tao is described. The Tao is described as the way. And what my work has been for some years now is finding a way to follow the way that isn't exactly prescribed in Taoism. Taoism makes a lot of advice and focus for the potential Taoist to say, just let it be as it is. Just let it be as it is. Just go with the flow. Just things will happen without making them happen. And that's how nature and the way works. However, part of that way has produced me. Part of that way has produced you. The natural order of things have produced human beings, and we have agency. And in that agency, we have inherited almost demigod-like power. The power to change the face of the earth, the power to end species, the power to change the climate on our planet, the power to wield terrible weapons of war, the power to enslave, the power to make people suffer. And now it's augmented by AI. And we have all of these godlike powers. We can print virus chains in laboratories for deadly pathogens. We can unleash nuclear war on each other and split apart the atom. So we've got these godlike powers. Our agency, our footprint in the world we're breaking the rules of the Tao, right? And so one of two things will happen. Either equilibrium will reassert itself one way or the other. Either we will come to some terrible form of calamity wherein our agency and our multitude and our footprint on this world will be stepped back for us, or we will elevate, we will actualize, we will lift up our form of wisdom and the adult maturity by which we wield all of that additional agency. And that is perfectly congruent with Taoism. In fact, it's not only perfectly congruent with Taoism, as in there's no rounding errors, it's actually mandated by Taoism. And I'm more interested in how we follow the way, how we wield our agency, how we lean towards our teleological callings, how we develop our ability to navigate life following our star in the sky. What was that last part of the poem? So I'll read the last few lines. It says, it will go even underground, renounce the sun and leave the house of the sky for the prodigal wandering of traveling by secret paths through darkness and through tumult, to simply and cunningly follow the way, even when it knows not the way. Just so, just so. If the way is not always seeking better ways, it is not the way. And what is the better way? It implies through this poem that the better way is a path of least resistance. And what are human beings causing collectively here? We're causing great resistance against the way that the things are, against the way, against the Tao. And the only way to ameliorate, come and say goodbye to me, Shats. The only way to ameliorate that resistance that we are causing is to lift our game up. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I love you. Have a beautiful day. I'll see you later. See you later, Smelly Gator. She said, don't forget your toilet paper. So, I mean, the Tao is just this universal principle that's gonna, you don't crook those books. You don't crook those books. It's gonna happen one way or the other. But there's two ways that can happen. Well, there's a few ways. The one way is if everybody miraculously becomes Taoist and animist, and we suddenly realize that we're in relationship with something that seeks a state of harmony. That doesn't mean violent and catastrophic things don't happen. Human beings were not there when the asteroid hit the Earth and caused the end of the dominant species, the dinosaurs, at that time. I mean, shit happens, right? But it turns out all of that was the way. Otherwise, we wouldn't not be here. And everything that we're calling terrible drama and calamity will eventually sort itself out one way or the other. The question is, are we going to go through yet another cycle of ignorance, yet another cycle of domination, yet another cycle of terrible foolishness before we get there? And the same goes for us individually. That's the heart of all philosophy. And the same goes for us psychologically. That's why people go to therapy in the first place. And the same goes for us in terms of education. What are we doing? We're trying to educate ourselves as a species out of our own folly. And it's the same project in this context of like a spiritual evolution. When are we not going to make the same fucking mistakes? When are we going to realize that there's such a profound difference between leadership and rulership? That there is no fucking argument between men and women. Like, I'm so sick and tired of the argument from angry feminists and from angry misogynists. It's so stupid. It is so fucking stupid. It's so old and so tired and such a dead argument. I mean, you sow what you reap, or you reap what you sow, rather. You reap what you sow. That's like part of the Tao as well. Do unto others. Make shit work. There's nothing about any of this that has to be mutually exclusive. And yet we still don't understand these simple rules of reciprocity. And this is not a tell-off to the people here. We're kind of like going, oh yeah, fuck, if only people could wake up and realize that. So how do people wake up and realize? Well, they wake up through calamity. So one of the ways is everybody suddenly wakes up and becomes animist and Buddhist and Taoist, and we just realize the silliness of what we've been doing. And the other way is we cause ourselves profound calamity and tragedy. And we create an example so resounding that every generation that comes after us uses us as the example, the cautionary tale of what not to do. And I think that's what's going to happen. Right? Or we do a little bit of both. We do a little bit of both. And it's not all going to happen at once. It's not all going to happen at once. While the caterpillar goes into the cocoon and starts dissolving, and it turns into a goo. And while it's turning into that goo, some of the incoming imaginal cells of the butterfly are already forming. And the immune system of the caterpillar attacks the incoming cells of the butterfly as if it's an infection. And yet the irony is, the secret aim of all tension is transformation. it turns out that that butterfly cannot form fully without some of that tensional dynamic playing out inside the cocoon. But you can't speak to caterpillar people in butterfly language, and the ending of one way is there while the other way is already beginning, right? Or the beginning is happening coterminous with the ending. So I've started another Substack with two. It's called Letters to Maya. It's just my observation of the world in the present moment about her development and who she's becoming and the person that she's going to be. And maybe at a time when I'm no longer there. I'm 51 years old and she's 4. So she's going to come of age into a world that we're trying to protect her from, because it's an ugly reality out there. So she's living a beautiful story, but I don't want to lie to her, like lying to her about the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. And then you find out all of it was real, and then she doesn't know how to trust her parents. So, in one sense, we have to keep her in a nest of safety. But in the same sense, we also have to prepare her one day for the reality that she's going to wake up into. And so, this is one of my ways of preparing her so that I can talk to the moment. And then one day when she reads these, if she decides to read them, she can get the context for what was going in the world and start appreciating how complex things were. Right. So I'm trying to write it in a register that she can appreciate as a young woman, maybe. And in that, what I like to do when I write those letters is I like to say, I like to tell her what's happening in the world. Like we're on the eve of war. But good things are happening as well. Good things are happening as well. In southern England recently, just last week, there's a return of a species that was thought extinct. It's called I think the large or the great tortoiseshell butterfly. Gary says parenting has never been as challenging as it is now. I'm not even a parent, and something I think about. Oh my God, dude! Like to prepare them to be functional in the world, you have to like make them understand that there's things like internet and bad people and psychopaths and all the rest of it. So I have to teach her about all of that without giving her the nightmares or making her worry about that stuff. It's a hugely complicated thing because you want to try and preserve innocence and make her believe in the realm of possibility without making her a fool and gullible. So it's such a tightrope to walk, but it's the honor of a lifetime. So in this letter I wrote to her, I said, in southern England, Samuel says, I've got 2 girls, 7 and 11, and it's so hard. It's so hard, the world that they're exposed to and the pressures to get phones, etc. Jesus Christ. I hold this tension with my wife all the time because she's like a no screens mum. She just fucking doesn't want the kids anywhere near screen. Maya's allowed to watch select shows and select movies, beautiful movies. And we choose them, we handpick them. But I want to play Minecraft with Maya. But my wife has read somewhere that it's, the dopaminergic risk is too high. And so we're in a tension to try and figure out what to do because I don't want Maya to arrive in her young teens not having game, not knowing how to use a mouse and a keyboard. And I want her to like be fluent in the world that she's going to inhabit one day. And my wife is arguing that there's time. And geez, Samuel, I don't know, man. I don't know what the right thing is to do, and I don't know who's right, and we could all be making terrible mistakes. The problem is, as a parent, you have to make peace with the fact that the only thing you can do is make mistakes. You've just got to live and love so courageously and so vulnerably and try to do your best. And just like that poem with the river, you've got to always follow the way, even if you don't know the way. You've got to go underground. You've got to crash over battlements. You just always have to try and find the path of least resistance. The point is, with that river, there is no wrong way that the river ran. There's no wrong way. Your best has to be good enough. Your best has to be good enough. The simple wish to find a way is, to me, the way. And on some level, our kids chose us on some level. And our best has to be good enough. And we have to be so courageous as parents, and we have to navigate so much. We have to understand so much. We have to know so much. We have to be prepared for so much. And the reality is, you cannot know everything. You cannot be prepared for everything. We cannot guess what's coming around the corner. All we can do is try our best. And it's the fate of a parent, it's the fate of a father, especially, to realize that you are taking on a job that is bigger than you, that you are going to fail at. And with that full knowing, make the attempt anyway. Because you just got to make the attempt anyway. There's this beautiful story. I was in a walking tour in Ireland, and we got told about the story of, let me see if I can find it. What's his little name now? Oh gosh, I can't really find it. Where is it? Open Palm. Here we go. 123. This is the story of this Catholic saint, and he's called Saint Kevin. And the story of Saint Kevin, it's almost sickly sweet. Old Saint Kevin, he's puts his hands out like this in prayer one day, and then a little bird nests in his hand. So he keeps praying, and he keeps praying because he doesn't want to disturb the bird, and the bird has to lay an egg in the palm of his hand and then has to raise it. So he keeps praying, and that's how he becomes recognized as a saint, because the folklore story is how Saint Kevin keeps his arms up and outstretched like this, not to keep the walls of not to keep the Israelite army from being defeated in the field like that one story, but simply to make a nesting place for a bird. And I heard that, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's great for St. Kevin. What a saint, what a guy. But you know who to me had the real courage was that bird. Because here's this mother bird that's doing what all parents do, trying to make a nest in the crossroads of something that can just change in a heartbeat, hoping like fucking hell that it's all just going to be okay in the day. Because what else can we do? Because what else can we do? And I want to read you this poem now. It says, it's called Open Palm, and this is from Stepping Through. It says, think of the courage the bird must find. Think of the courage the bird must find to drop off the wing, to trust, to make a nesting in the bowl of the hand. Hey, Mark, nice to have you here. Mark's a good friend of mine, and I'm glad to have you here, mate. Think of the courage that we're talking about, the plight of parents. Think of the courage the bird must find to drop off the wing, to trust, to make a nesting in the bowl of the hand, held out against gravity, against the gravity of mass and habit, that which could be withdrawn at any moment. We live under the hand of grace, this peace that we live under, the peace that we still live under. Everything's actually still going okay for the most part in most places in the world, even though it seems so dark and troubling. We still have running water. We can still take our children to school. We can still give them a beautiful life. We can still shelter them to some degree. Think of the courage the bird must find to drop off the wing, to trust, to make a nesting in the bowl of the hand. Jacob says parenthood as plight. Yeah, man. Yeah. And anything that you care about, you become a parent of. To make a nesting in the bowl of the hand, held out against the gravity of mass and habit, that which could be withdrawn at any moment, and the desperate courage, that fierce burden sacred to every parent, the urgency quickened by a necessity which never leaves us, the urgency quickened by a necessity that never leaves us. Every single parent is living with an urge, the parent's urge. An urge is an animal thing to look after that which we care about. Massive privilege, Jacob. But I'm speaking for a minute about my compassion for the parent in us that feels so unequal to the enormous task of what we have to do at the moment to live up to that privilege. And the desperate courage, that fierce burden sacred to every parent, and this urgency quickened by a necessity which never leaves us. That's what it means to be a parent in the modern world. To have to worry like Samuel was worried about the social pressures children feel and the world that we're going to leave them when we're gone. The urgency quickened by a necessity which never leaves us, even when they leave us, even when our children grow up, even when they're on their own little journeys, we're always caring for them. And to care for something means to be vulnerable to something, to be vulnerable to terrible loss and heartbreak. Always, always. The urgency quickened by a necessity which never leaves us, even when they leave us, to lay the precious egg of hope against hope along the crossroad of the nest. Because all we ever do in our best efforts for our children is hope that one day their river can reach the ocean and they can see the meaning of it all, even the hard parts, even the hard parts. And at the time of writing this, my wife is at home in the Antipodes minding our 18-month-old toddler. This is when Maya was just 18 months old. She was minding her on her own with little support. We didn't have help. We don't have family that can help. While I was traipsing around Connemara and North Clare getting my Anamkara on. As parents, we are always torn between the impossible choice of how we best care for our children. As parents, we are always torn between the impossible choice of how we best care for our children, the necessary filling of our own cups, because you can't pour from an empty cup, the necessary filling of our own cups, and the pouring out of all of our resources in service of theirs, because we're trying to make their little cups strong. The bird nesting in the open palm is, of course, a reference to the story of St. Kevin, the central figure. Hey, Daniel, lovely to have you here. This bird nesting in the open palm is, of course, a reference to the story of St. Kevin, the central figure of a popular tale in Irish Christian folklore, who, according to the tale, when a bird landed in one of his open hands, seeing that the bird was about to lay its egg, St. Kevin decided to keep his hand open still, so as not to continue in this position until the egg had hatched and the baby birds were ready to fly away. We're all trying to hold that space for our children, and it's so impossible, right? And we don't all have the saintly grace of God resting over us. We have to find this impossible courage inside of us every single time. And this poem is less about the piety and the holiness of Saint Kevin, and more about the very earthly courage of the mother bird, a reflection on the plight of all parents, burdened in uncertain times with a charge too large for them, and always engaged in earnest and desperate prayer. To be a parent is to put you back in relationship with prayer, because you're always praying that things are going to be okay. You're always praying that you're going to have enough in you. You're always praying that you're going to know what to do to face this impossibly complex moment. And you're always praying for other people to step up in some way to make the world a lighter, brighter place for them. The poem is less about the piety and holiness of St. Kevin and more about the very earthly courage of the mother bird, a reflection on the plight of all parents, burdened in uncertain times with a charge too large for them and always engaged in earnest and desperate prayer. Parents are forever on the edge of a conversation, petitioning the world, God, providence, anyone who will listen to provide us the means, the respite and the blessings we need, not only for ourselves, but simply to enable us to shelter and care for our children and set them on their way, Yeah, man, that's it, That's it. Carly, so good to have you here. So good to have you here. Daniel, I'm glad you joined. You joined towards the end, and we shared two poems that I wrote. The one is called Following the Way, and it's about the way the river always seems to follow the way, even when it doesn't know the way. It's always making its way to the sea. And this weird relationship between the river runs the way that it does because of the way the land is shaped. We live the kind of lives we do based on the landscape of the world that we inhabit when we're passing through it, making our way towards our paths of least resistance to our great big release or becoming or whatever it is that is drawing us forward. But by the same token, we're also shaping the landscape that we pass through. We leave a mark here. And we have to reinvent ourselves, just like the river crashing over the edge of the waterfall and churning and encountering some like psychological violence or emotional violence or violence in the world. And there's so much of that in the world at the moment. And then realizing that most of what we're doing here is trying to leave a legacy behind us. That's the arc of meaning that I'm trying to connect to. And Maya was in and out here with her little drawings today, and she's off to school, and just some of the folks, we started talking about this conundrum of parenting because, of course, it's one of the biggest privileges of my life. But when you care about something deeply, you immediately become vulnerable, profoundly vulnerable. And all we want, I've never known a love more desperate than a love for my child, my children. I want them to be safe in the world. I want them to not be so safe that they never learn resilience. I want them to be happy, but I also want them to know how to sit with grief and sorrow. I want them to be kind and loving, but I also want them to be defiant. You know, I want them to know what good advice sounds like, but I also want them to go their own way and make mistakes. Make mistakes, make mistakes, make mistakes, just make mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn. And one of the things that my wife and I have cottoned onto is that when you teach a child self love, you never have to worry about their friends or their choices. And that is, we can't teach her that if we're not practicing it. So it makes us step up in such incredibly profound ways. Folks, my internet connection is shitting itself. So I'm actually going to go inside and wrap up the video and just wish you all a beautiful evening. Let's see if that internet connection's any better. And I might just sit here for a moment. And you can welcome to our chaos. Welcome to our chaos. Ah, that's it. That's it. The plight of a parent, huh? The plight of a parent. And the nice thing is, you can't lie to your kids forever. So if you're trying to teach them about self-love, you have to learn to practice it, and you have to learn to practice it authentically. And it's a constant practice. It's a constant practice that we're almost never getting right. But yeah, thanks for the talk. Yeah, thanks, Gary. I hope you all have a beautiful evening. Sorry about the wobbly camera at the end. Thank you very much for participating in this and for holding space for this conversation. I think it was a beautiful one and a good one. Has anybody got any comments or questions? And if you don't, just give me lots of love hearts, please. It helps other people find this conversation, and it helps the algorithm realize that a human conversation happened here. That's it. I've got I've got a lot of poems like that around parenting and childhood, and I think I'll share more and more of them over the next few days. There's some profoundly beautiful ones that remind us how to be with ourselves as well. Anyway, folks, thank you very much and take care. Bye. Gary says, "Oh, Gary says the world is so fucked up that I don't know if I'm strong enough to be a parent." Yeah, sometimes, Gary, you have to. Like, we were so torn by that question, man. We were so torn by that question. And we didn't want to be selfish, you know, we didn't want to have a child for us. We wanted to, you know, and it's actually I had a teacher that taught me biblical Hebrew. And she lived in very, very troubling times during in Israel during its formation. And she had left wherever she had lived through, she was a refugee basically. And she had lived a tough life, and she just chose love. This woman, her name was Tovi. I've got a photo of her up here. That's why my daughter's middle name is Tovi. Um, she just chose this kind of form of motherly leadership and grace. And no matter what was happening, she just kept finding the positives. And she wasn't a fool. She wasn't a fool. She wasn't a naive twit. She just kept finding it because she was just the light that she was looking for in the world. She just decided to become that light. And no matter what was happening to her children and to the kids in the village around her, she just kept on shining that light, kept on saying things were going to be okay, kept on finding the beautiful lining in everything, kept on reminding people that blessings come and that beautiful things are happening. I was saying somewhere in this video, those letters that I write to Maya, I wrote her two pieces in that I found news in the world. There's a website, a few websites, and what they do is they share only beautiful, positive news about great things that are happening in the world. And so I wrote, you can go read it. It's a Substack of mine called Letters to Maya. And there's two little pieces in there about the reintroduction of a species of butterfly that we thought was extinct that's now been found breeding in southern England. And I looked at that through the animist lens. And I also looked at this. Croatia recently announced itself free of landmines, completely free of landmines, bearing in mind that these people had 570,000 landmines at one stage. So human beings planted, just think of that word, planted explosive devices underground so that if somebody walked over it unknowing, they would be blown to smithereens. Just what kind of a human project is that? And now the Croatians, through their memory of that terrible war, have realized what kind of relationship they want to have with place and with land and with future generations. And they committed to taking those landmines out of the ground, and they declared themselves landmine free. So, right here in the middle of our stupidity, our profound stupidity of wars and of addictions to fossil fuels and our addiction to extractive capitalism and our angry politics and all of that, this AI explosion by tech psychopaths. In the middle of all of that, human beings are growing up and learning and choosing a beautiful future. And sometimes, just like in Croatia, it took that profoundly fucking horrific war for people to learn that lesson eventually. And the one silver lining is that maybe whatever trouble we make for ourselves now, if it's terrible enough, maybe we'll learn some lasting lesson. I think we will. Ladies and gents, have a beautiful evening, and thank you again. Ciao.